Hey all. Okay, so this is my fan edit, if you will, of the first 10 minutes of Suicide Squad. Now, you're going to notice that there are a lot of kind of almost glaring differences after kind of the first minute, really. But I'll let you just kind of watch it for now, and then I'll give you some commentary after to kind of help you process sort of what all you just saw. Anyway, hopefully you'll like it. And anyway, thanks again for clicking onto this. And I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Chow time!
It's time. Lloyd, step up the door! Dinner time!
Only my friends call me Floyd.
You ain't got no friends, Floyd.
What's that?
That is called loaf.
Loaf.
It's got a little bit of biscotti in there, toenails, rat shit. Everything a grown fella needs like you.
Can I tell you something? Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
One day, somehow, some way, I'm gonna get out of here, and I'm gonna rain down on you like the Holy Ghost.
Man, you just threatened a staff member.
Yeah?
Yeah, you have.
Do something.
Let's have some fun.
What?
Hey, Angelo. This is the exterminator you called for your rat problem. Account's looking a little thin.
No one gets paid until what needs to get done gets done.
Nope, that's not the rules. No money, no honey. Whoa, here's your boy right now. With about 20 of his new best friends. I'm still seeing zeros over here, Angie.
Then stop it, you, and do your job.
Oh, they're taking him out of the car now. In about 30 seconds, your window is going to close forever.
Okay, relax. There was an accounting error. We said it.
Now double it for being a dickhead. You got 10 seconds.
We're not the kind of people you play with.
Did you threaten me? This dude's gonna get a sore throat from all the singing he's about to do.
You son of a bitch.
Pleasure doing business with you, Angie.
You should talk to Mama more.
Yeah, I know.
Mama stays in bed a lot.
Yeah, she's still going out at night.
Dad, it's okay. I can take care of her. I know how to make pancakes now.
Hey, babe, that's beautiful. She's supposed to be taking care of you, you know? That's how that's supposed to work. I want you to come live with me. All right? I came at you with some resources. I'm gonna get us a spot. It's gonna be nice, all right?
Mama says I can't live with you because you kill people.
That's not true. That's a lie. She's lying to you.
Daddy, I know you do bad things. Don't worry. I still love you.
Come on. I'm gonna figure this out. All right?
It's over, Deadshot. I don't want to do this in front of your daughter.
Daddy, please.
Zoe, move!
Please, Daddy, don't do it. Please.
Quinzel. You know, I live for these moments with you. What do you got?
Got your kitty.
So thoughtful. There is something you could do for me, Doctor.
Anything. I mean, yeah.
I need a machine gun.
A machine gun?
What do we have here?
What are you gonna do? You gonna kill me, Mr. J?
What? Oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm just gonna hurt you. Really, really bad.
You think so? Well, I can take it.
Question. Would you die for me?
Yes.
That's too easy. Would you live for me? Hmm?
Yes.
Careful. Do not say this oath thoughtlessly. Desire becomes surrender, surrender becomes power. You want this?
I do.
Say it. Say it. Say it. Pretty, 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 pretty.
Please.
Oh, God, you're so good.
I'm fucked up, I'm black and blue, I'm built for all the abuse. I got secrets that nobody knows. You got me hooked up on the feeling, you got me hanging from the ceiling. So don't let me
We have got company.
Betsy, Betsy, Betsy. Come on, Puddin'. Do it! Stupid bats, you're ruining date night! Puddin'. Puddin', okay, swat!
You don't own me. I'm not just one of your many toys.
moves fire up, all right? You gonna come down from there or what? Yeah, look at you. You know the rules, hotness. You gotta keep off these bars.
On these bars?
Yeah, those bars. Oh my God. You are really in bad shape upstairs, lady.
Gonna come in here and tell me that? No, you're too scared. Come on, I'm bored. I'm bored. Play with me.
You put 5 of my guards in the hospital, honey. No one's gonna play with you. You sleep on the ground.
I sleep where I want, when I want, with who I want.
Oh man, I love you. Alpha 1. Hit her. Come on, man, you're 6'4". She's a tiny little girl. We got a choice tonight. What we got here? We got chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla. My job is to keep you alive until you die. Do you understand that? Spring break! Ooh. That is just a whole lot of pretty and a whole lot of crazy.
Hey again. So you can give me some constructive and respectful comments below if you want, but let's just get right into sort of the commentary here. Now, this was actually a really difficult job to do, largely because the editing house did so much to edit it like a trailer. For those of you who don't know, this is kind of notorious with this movie. It was handed over to a little production company that does only trailers. And what they'll usually do is they'll get a rough cut of the movie, sometimes with scenes that are deleted for the theatrical cut, and they'll, like you'll see it occasionally, there are scenes in a trailer that aren't in the actual movie, or they'll make a scene look very different from how it originally was. Well, what they ended up doing with the first 10 minutes of Suicide Squad was such a harsh and brutal hack job of what might have been the original film. We will never actually know, because apparently they overfilmed for it. They filmed so much content with Jared Leto as the Joker and so much other stuff that you end up not seeing as full a picture of this story as you might have gotten. And it's so bad that with the first film, the first version of the film rather than my edit, when I first watched it, I was really put off just by the first 10 minutes. This is apparently a very common standard. It's not just me, but I usually judge a film by where it takes me in the first 10 minutes. If it's too fast a ride, then I have a little bit of a hard time following things. And the problem mostly with Suicide Squad was that you had a very fast ride in those first 10 minutes. So there was not enough to get the audience kind of latched on to any one or two things. And really in those first 10 minutes, you really do need that feeling. A good example might be a James Bond movie, because every James Bond movie is someone's first James Bond movie. I know some people say that about everything, or every movie is someone's first movie. I don't think that's the case. In some instances, I think the reality is that a popular film is more likely to be someone's first movie. Fair enough? And in the case of Suicide Squad, it was so harsh within that first 10 minutes to watch. And other YouTube creators have pointed this out. You have that opening scene where you go between the DC logo through this weird color saturated version of the scenery into this swamp, and then you have black print that you can't read over this swamp as it flies by, so that all of this greenery that passes in front of the camera actually prevents you from reading the text. So one very subtle thing, wouldn't be subtle if you have seen the movie before and remember that part, but one very subtle aspect is that I changed that text. I not only changed it so that you could read it first off, by making the print white on the regular background. I don't think you can even see the text behind it because it just gets obscured so much. But I actually put in that it's not just Black Site, Louisiana, USA, but I give the name of it, Black Site Belle Rev, which is important. We need to know that it's called Belle Rev. Why do we need to know it's called Belle Rev? Because in the very next scene, we see it painted in very calligraphic, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or if that's even a word, but it's in very fancy writing on a wall on this little mural with the symbol of the site. It's a kind of military prison where we have these metas. Where we're left off is we don't know where the heck we are. And really it's important for the audience that we do in fact know exactly where we are, what we're doing. We don't need to necessarily know who these people are because we kind of already do. Looking at the poster, watching the trailers, we kind of already know who these people are. Anyway, so we know that the one character is Deadshot. We know that Will Smith is Deadshot. So you notice I leave that in, where we're just coming in on him punching a punching bag. And it's interesting in how that scene begins and ends, because at the beginning, he's punching a punching bag, and then the guards are beating him. So there's a resonance there, and the song is playing in the background, The House of the Rising Sun, because the song takes place in Louisiana, and it has a little bit of resonance here. It's a house for the condemned, this black site prison where nobody knows you're there. Okay, pretty cool. So what happens next? Well, you don't get the actual title screen until much, much later, around the time that Amanda Waller comes on. Well, nobody liked that because by that time, I think you're like a good... It's basically 10 minutes into the movie at that point. And you really need that title within the first few minutes of the film, not after you've already introduced several characters. You need to introduce one character and introduce that this is kind of a brutal thing. Well, one thing that I did was I took the audio, because this film has a lot of overlapping audio within its scene cuts, and it might not be something you notice, but your brain did. I took the audio from that, and even though it wasn't a very neat edit job on that, I'll admit to that, what I did was I put it over the opening title, because that gives it more of an emotional impact. You're like, oh wow, this is really intense and heavy. That's what this is all about. This is about this character. He's trapped and he's being abused. And, you know, nobody cares about him. He's alone. So where the heck did he come from? Anyway, so in the next scene, after the title, I show you where he came from. I show you who he was on the outside. And rather than just having that scene cut in without any kind of framework, I give you where the time is, where this is in the timeline. This is 6 months earlier. And I even give it a little bit of a color to reflect who it's about. It's about Deadshot, so it's this dark red that's reflective of his costume. So we get him committing an assassination for a guy, and you know, it's for the mob, and he ends up asking for $2 million so that he can afford a better life for himself and his daughter. All right, pretty cool. That's actually really interesting, because we cut from that to him, and I put it as a week later, but it really doesn't matter when it is. The point is, it's just not long after. I just put it as a week because I'm like, okay, well, 1 minute he's in LA, let's say, committing this assassination, and then the next week he's back in Gotham, where it's cold and snowy, as you can see, and it's around Christmas time. Anyway, so my whole point was with that, let's actually get a continuous story. Let's keep the continuity from one to the next so that we kind of know who Deadshot is, what he's all about. He might be an assassin, but he is all about his kid. He knows that that the mother is not a good woman, that she isn't taking very good care of her, that she's neglectful, and he's not okay with it. He cares about his daughter and wants her to be okay. That's an emotional investment. We see that even though we would normally cast him as a villain, he's actually more of an anti-hero in this instance because he does do some good things. He does have a sense of ethics. It's just not in keeping with what we would normally contextualize as solid ethics, right? All right, so we go from that and Batman capturing him, cut to Arkham Asylum. And I put that as 4 months ago from where the story is taking place. I like to use ago rather than earlier because earlier could mean it's 4 months earlier than that week 6 months prior to our story, right? Leave out the ambiguous language, I say. Make it as clear as humanly possible what the heck is going on in the story. Okay. I wanted this to be like kind of in a neat little timeline so we understand what the heck is going on. So what I did was I figured, okay, he gets captured right around Christmas time, right? So what's 2 months later? You've got February. Let's say that this is around Valentine's Day. Let's say that Harley Quinn and the Joker kind of have their whirlwind romance around Valentine's Day. Let's make it kind of a romantic thing. And I didn't like put a specific date in there, you'll notice. I left it all very ambiguous. The only kind of hard time we have is that one part of this story happened around Christmas. So then this story would take place somewhere around May or June in the year. All right. So if the next sort of chapter of the story takes place in February, then that works because that would still be kind of cold. That would still be, and it's not long enough really for our protagonists to get institutionalized. But it's long enough for them to have experienced a certain amount of harm and hurt and upset. Okay? So with that, I wanted basically the story of Harley Quinn, instead of being all these little interspersed bits, to just be continuous. Let's see everything that happened to her from where she first met the Joker to where she was captured by Batman. Let's have that all as one little vignette. We aren't going to put it before the credits. That's an important aspect. This is sort of setting up our 3-act structure, if you will. And having all of these little interspersed scenes from a different part of the movie, a different part of the story that takes place way, way earlier, it makes it harder to kind of find our grounding. So I did an interesting thing there with my fan edit. I took part of the earlier scene where Harley kind of has all of these little flashes as she's getting an electroshock, and I put that later in the film when she's standing on the stairs because she needs to see something. She needs to sort of have a flash there. And what they do in that part of the film is they have a little flash of her falling from the top of the catwalk at Ace Chemicals. Okay, well, let's have that be her little flash that she has when she's on the stairs and then whips out her gun and points it at Deadshot. That, to me, makes a little bit more sense in the context of the story. She's having a little bit of a flashback. She's kind of remembering this experience. You know, and it's just a really it's a bit more interesting, and it doesn't take you out of the scene. That's the important thing. You aren't seeing this other scene entirely that takes place in a different time and place and goes on for several minutes and is very dramatic and interesting. No, you need that earlier. You need that back when we're talking about Harley and the Joker and what they did. Okay, so let's put that in. Let's put that right there in the middle of this thing, and it shows why she is so dedicated to him, why she is so crazy, because she was exposed to the same chemicals that he was. So we need that in there because it helps us understand, okay, this is basically a female version of the Joker at this point. And I removed a lot of Amanda Waller's little narration breaks, which required that I actually cut parts of scenes. And one of the worst aspects to this was that it ended up with me cutting parts of, like, the songs that they were using. But there's no getting around that when you're doing a fan edit of a film. If, unless you're starting with raw footage, you're going to be doing that. You're going to be breaking up music cues, which it's a pain to do because then the song doesn't flow quite right if you cut it off in the middle somewhere. But let's face it, they edited those songs already for the film, so it is what it is. I was actually really happy with how that turned out as a rule, because it was okay to kind of have Harley have these flashbacks every now and again. And they kind of established that she does have these later on in that same sequence of scenes, in those sequences of events. And that was really fascinating for me because, like, okay, she gets the electroshock as she's licking the bar of her cage, and the guard is, kind of looking at her. Okay, well, that's kind of an interesting thing that she flashes back to him force-feeding her. And after all of these experiences that she's had with the Joker that we've seen, we understand, okay, she went on a hunger strike and refused to eat because she was separated from him. That gives us a lot more context as to who she is. Now, as for the fan edit itself, after that one, I basically kind of clocked out at the 10-minute mark there because the rest of the film kind of proceeds as normal. I didn't take too much from later. I cut some stuff out of the Amanda Waller scenes, like they cut to a scene of a funeral, a state funeral for Superman. But in Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, we already have seen what kind of stuff went on. So we don't need a flashback to that at all. We also don't need these weird little baseball card things that are out of a trailer, honestly, and you're just gonna, if it was in a trailer, you would go back on YouTube and pause it to read through all the little stats for characters like Flag and Deadshot and Captain Boomerang or whatever. Well, I got rid of those in my fan edit. I also got rid of some other stuff that was just really problematic. One example was in the Pentagon scene, there's a surprising amount of dialogue that serves no purpose and goes nowhere. And one of the things that I did with that scene was I tightened up the dialogue a great deal. And I also shifted a couple of scenes around. One thing that I did was the one executive, I don't, he's like some head honcho in the government. I don't know who he is, just from memory, but he's like, we've got deterrence against Iran and North Korea, And then he goes on about fluoride in the drinking water. That is so much of a tangent that it's more there as kind of a joke. And this is an action movie and a scene where we have exposition and we don't really need jokes, which is one of the reasons why I got rid of those little, sort of name and stats thing. You don't need that. You don't need a list with a bunch of wacky stuff in the middle of your scene where you're talking about the person. You don't need jokes like that. Have the jokes sort of shown, I guess, would be my thing. But okay. So he starts making all these weird side comments about all that stuff. So I cut a lot of that out and just had it go from, we've got nuclear deterrence against Iran, but what happens if Superman decides to fly down, take the roof off the White House, and grab the president? Amanda Waller has a plan. That's what you cut to. You cut right to that because that's the whole point of the scene. Amanda Waller presenting this to these men and talking a little bit about it. We've already gotten a little bit of exposition on that, and it's really kind of pointless anyway. So this is developing the story. This is where we see what the sorceress can really do. We've already been introduced to her, but we need to see what she can do. We've seen that she has an established relationship with Flag. Okay, fine. Now let's see what she can actually do when she's released, right? Let's see how in control they really are of her. Well, that's an important aspect of the story because in this first act, a lot of it is Waller deluding herself that she can control the sorceress. Okay, so from there we have to kind of develop the rest of the plot. And what I did was I took a scene from later in the film where they're at Bel Rev, and there's no context given for where that site is, where that scene takes place. So I just went ahead and put it right after the Pentagon scene, where she is trying to convince Flag to get more than just the sorceress on their side, to get this other team, Task Force X. And it makes sense because the Pentagon's reluctant, Flag is reluctant, he's reluctant to even use the sorceress because he wants to keep June Moon kind of as herself, right? Well, that makes sense as a storyline. That's what we're setting up. So, I don't know. Yes, they're in the same clothes, but it also takes place just before they fly down to Bel Rev. So it's like, okay, maybe they're at the base before they get on the helicopters to fly down to Louisiana. It makes sense in the sense of the story from where you're going. You're following these characters. You're following Amanda Waller as she goes to meet these characters, and all of our characters are coming together. We have them meet Harley Quinn and Deadshot, who we met earlier. We have them meet some of the characters that we were briefly introduced to, showing who they were out in the world, and now seeing who they are in prison. Okay, well, good. That gives us some understanding of who these people are now. And one by one, because I cut so much out of all that, I just went ahead and had it kind of there where they say, not interested, no thanks, not happening. And this plays in later after the sorceress, comes in, and they are conscripted. They are not given a choice. They are going to go and fight. They're given these shots with these explosives. And, it works as a pretty powerful plot device. Kind of, if you remember the Escape from New York and Escape from L.A. franchise that John Carpenter made with Kurt Russell back in the 80s and 90s. That's basically what this kind of plot element is. It really is kind of these are Snake Plissken kind of characters and Snake Plissken is an anti-hero. But with Suicide Squad, it really needs to walk this very fine line in order to work. You have to have your characters both in a gray area and also have their own sense of morality. They have to be able to come through things from being wild cards of their own to working together as a team by the end. That's important. So you end up with a much better story overall as a result. And I was very careful. I did a fan edit of Ghostbusters Answer the Call from 2016, where I removed a lot of the non sequitur jokes that just kind of went off into tangents, and I ended up shaving like a good 10 minutes off the movie there. In this instance, because I cut out so much random crap and some of the nasty, stupid dialogue at the beginning, I ended up cutting out about 10 minutes of fluff and reworking the ending. That was important to me. If a film doesn't have a good beginning and ending, then what's the point of the middle? Honestly, you can have almost anything in between a good beginning and an ending, and people will forgive you for whatever's in the middle there. It can be the stupidest, most insane plot. How do I know? Kiss, kiss, bang, bang. Good beginning, good ending. Everything in the middle is terrible. Pretty much. Aside from that one scene where they're talking about how certain people look like other celebrities, that was a good part. Anyway, but looking at just Suicide Squad, there was one part to the ending that I absolutely hated that they put in at before the credits. And that was the scene where the Joker rescues Harley. You follow me? So what I did was I took that part out because you don't need it for the ending. It's a different ending as a result. They're all still in prison. You see Harley in prison. You see everyone else in prison. They're kind of in a better place except for Captain Boomerang, who still wants out. But at the very end, you have that little mid-credit sequence where Waller talks with Bruce Wayne. One of the favorite things I did for the edit was I took that scene where Harley gets rescued by the Joker from prison, and I put that at the end of the end credits, just before the logos for the director and the studio and everything like that. I think it was Atlas Entertainment was the direction company. So I put that way at the end because that you need at the end as a little tag end, as a little bit of a high note after seeing where Harley was and what her journey was over things. And most importantly, we think we see the Joker die in the movie. So seeing that little scene at the very end as a last little note, we see that the Joker's alive, he's rescuing her, and his last words, the last words of the film are, "Let's go home." That is so poignant. It has so much gravitas. It has so much emotional closure to her story that its placement is very vital to how good you think the story is. So to me, that's one of the keys. Have the story begin well and end well. Have it work and make sense throughout the beginning. It's kind of like having good chapters at the beginning and good chapters at the end. As long as everything kind of makes sense and follows a rough narrative in the middle, the audience will follow you, whether they're a reader or a viewer. So it really can work that way. Anyway, so this video is running a bit long, so I'm going to cut it off here. But thanks again for watching, and I hope that my commentary kind of helped contextualize everything in the film for you. The fan edit is a bit of an art in itself, I like to think. I've seen some really good fan edits and some really bad ones. But I like to think that it shows enough of a dedication to the art of storytelling that maybe we can get something a bit more out of these than just, whatever. But like I said, I did a really good fan edit of Ghostbusters 2016, and I did a really surprisingly good fan edit of The Net 2.0 that was an absolutely terrible film, and I was really glad to have reworked that. If I could, I would really give it the once over and remove just a whole bunch of stuff from that film. But as it is, Suicide Squad was over 2 hours long, and that is way too dang long for a film like that. You can't have that much garbage in a film. You can't have a bad beginning and a mediocre ending. You have to have some reward for the characters. They have to go on a journey. They have to be transformed by it. There has to be some payoff for the audience in terms of something that we're introduced to earlier or something that's left hanging. You have to have that payoff. You have to have those little last few questions answered and a few questions still remaining. So that said, thanks for watching. If you want to like, subscribe, ding the bell so that you'll get updates from my channel. And if you want to, please donate to my Patreon campaign, because I would love, love, love to be able to start doing this a bit more full-time and make more videos for you. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye.
Why don't you take another little piece of my heart? Why don't you take it?